Ben Affleck walks off Jimmy Kimmel's show after his repeated jabs turn personal, revealing years of behind-the-scenes animosity. "You've been taking cheap shots for too long," Affleck said before storming out, leaving producers scrambling and audience in shock. The studio lights dimmed as Jimmy Kimmel's signature smirk filled television screens across America. "Tonight we welcome back Ben Affleck, here to promote his new film," Kimmel announced to enthusiastic applause. Yet behind the practiced smiles and polished introduction lay a tension that industry insiders had whispered about for years. A professional relationship frayed by passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled contempt. From the moment Affleck stepped onto the stage, attentive viewers noticed something off. His smile seemed forced, his handshake with Kimmel perfunctory. The actor settled into the guest chair, adjusting his navy suit jacket while Kimmel launched into his opening remarks. "Ben, always good to have you back," Kimmel began, his tone carrying that characteristic edge of sarcasm. "Though I'm surprised you found time in your busy schedule. Your new film is getting quite the buzz. Unlike your last 3 projects," a ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the audience. Affleck maintained his composure, offering a tight smile. "Good to be here, Jimmy. The film's been a labor of love for everyone involved." "Must be nice working on something you love," Kimmel continued. "Instead of those superhero cash grabs you seem so fond of. What was it you said about never playing Batman again? Before doing exactly that?" The first sign of genuine irritation flashed across Affleck's face. "I think what I said was taken out of context. The creative process is complicated." "Speaking of complicated," Kimmel interrupted, turning toward the audience with an exaggerated wink. "Ben knows all about complicated, doesn't he, folks? His personal life has more plot twists than his movies." The studio temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Affleck's jaw tightened visibly as he sat straighter in his chair. "I came here to talk about the film, Jimmy, not to have my personal life dissected for laughs. Just adding some entertainment value," Kimmel replied with a dismissive wave. "That's what we're all about here. Entertainment. Something your last directorial effort could have used more of, according to critics." The camera caught Affleck's knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest. In the control room, producers exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't the playful banter the show was known for. There was genuine hostility brewing. "You know what?" Affleck said, his voice notably calmer than his body language suggested. "Why don't we just play the clip from the film? That's why I'm here." Sure, Kimmel nodded, but didn't signal for the clip. Instead, he leaned forward. "But first, I'm curious about something. With your track record of project selections lately, how do you decide which scripts to take on? Just throwing darts at a board, or is there an actual strategy?" Several audience members gasped audibly. The comment wasn't just a joke. It was a deliberate attack on Affleck's professional judgment. For a moment, silence claimed the studio. "That's interesting coming from you," Affleck finally responded, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "A man who built his career on pranking celebrities and making people eat candy on Halloween." The audience oohed at the unexpected. Counterpunch. Kimmel's smile faltered momentarily before returning with forced brightness. "At least my career trajectory has been consistent," Kimmel retorted. "Up, instead of whatever roller coaster you've been riding. One minute you're winning Oscars, the next you're in films people watch on planes when they've run out of other options." Behind the scenes, producers were frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but Kimmel waved them off. The ratings for this confrontation would be too good to interrupt. Affleck took a deep breath, visibly struggling to maintain his professionalism. "Look, I've respected you as a host for years, despite your tendency to go for the easy joke. But there's a line between comedy and cruelty, and you've been dancing over that line for a while now." "Oh, are we being sensitive tonight?" Kimmel asked, eyes widening in mock surprise. "I thought we had an understanding, Ben. This is what we do here. We joke, we tease, we entertain. If you can't handle that, what I can't handle, Affleck, cut in, his voice rising slightly, is being ambushed with personal attacks disguised as humor. There's a difference between good-natured ribbing and whatever this is. The tension was palpable now. The audience stock still as they witnessed what was clearly no longer a scripted interaction. Camera operators exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to maintain tight shots on the increasingly agitated guest. Let's just say, Kimmel continued, unrelenting, that your reputation in the industry isn't exactly pristine. People talk, Ben. Directors, producers, crew members. And what they say isn't always flattering. Affleck's expression darkened. Are you seriously going there right now? On live television? It's late night, Kimmel shrugged with exaggerated innocence. The perfect time for truths people don't want to hear during daylight hours. In the control room, the executive producer was now frantically gesturing for a commercial break, but the red light on the camera remained steadfast. This confrontation had taken on a momentum of its own, racing toward an inevitable collision. You know what I find interesting, Jimmy? Affleck said, his voice unnervingly calm. How you've managed to rebrand yourself over the years. From the guy who started on The Man Show, objectifying women, to this supposed moral voice in late night. That transformation must have required quite the selective memory. The audience fell completely silent. No one had expected Affleck to go on the offensive with such precision. For the first time, Kimmel appeared genuinely rattled. We all evolve, Kimmel responded, his trademark smirk notably absent. Some of us just evolve into better versions of ourselves. Others, he let the implication hang in the air. Affleck leaned forward, eyes locked on his host. Finish that thought, Jimmy. I'm curious what character assassination you've prepared for tonight. The studio held its collective breath. Something had fundamentally shifted in the dynamic between host and guest, revealing years of simmering resentment that had finally found its breaking point. Kimmel cleared his throat, regaining some composure. Let's not pretend you're some misunderstood artist, Ben. The public sees through the carefully crafted image. How many second chances have you gotten while others get canceled for less? That's rich coming from you, Affleck retorted, his voice dangerously steady. The man who's made a career out of public humiliation disguised as comedy. At least I create something. What do you contribute besides mockery? The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the light-hearted banter they had come to expect. The stage manager frantically signaled for commercial, but Kimmel ignored him, sensing the viral potential of this moment. Create something? Kimmel's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Let's talk about your creations. Remember that tattoo? The phoenix rising from the ashes? Symbolic of your career needing constant resurrection? Affleck's expression hardened. You want to get personal? Fine, let's get personal. You've been taking cheap shots at me for years under the guise of comedy. Always from the safety of your host desk, with your writers feeding you lines through your earpiece. At least I don't need 20 takes to deliver my lines convincingly, Kimmel shot back, the veneer of playful teasing completely abandoned now. A production assistant appeared at the edge of the set, desperately trying to convey that they needed to break, but neither man acknowledged her presence. Tell me, Jimmy, Affleck leaned forward, does it bother you that your relevance depends entirely on mocking people more talented than yourself? Or have you made peace with being a parasite? In the industry? The audience gasped. Kimmel's face flushed red. Talented? Kimmel scoffed. Is that what you call it? Your last 3 films were critical disasters. Even your friends couldn't defend them publicly. At least I take risks, Affleck countered. When was the last time you did something that wasn't safe and formulaic? Something that didn't involve ridiculing children's Halloween candy or celebrity mean tweets. Behind the scenes, network executives were frantically calling the control room. This had gone far beyond the boundaries of acceptable television conflict. The director signaled desperately for a cut to commercial. You know what your problem is, Ben? Kimmel's voice dropped to a near whisper, forcing the audience to strain to hear him. You can't stand being the butt of the joke. For someone who chose a life in the spotlight, you have remarkably thin skin. And your problem, Affleck replied, equally quiet but intense, is that you mistake cruelty for comedy. You've built an empire on humiliation, and you're so deep in it, you can't even see how twisted that is. The commercial break signal was now impossible to ignore, with multiple staff members visibly panicking at the side of the stage. Fine, Kimmel relented, addressing the frantic crew. We'll take a break. When we come back, maybe our guest can tell us about his movie instead of his fragile ego. The on-air light dimmed, but neither man relaxed their posture. The audience murmured, smartphones out, already posting about the unprecedented tension they were witnessing. You're unbelievable, Affleck said the moment they were off air, loud, enough that the front rows could still hear him. Did you plan this ambush, or do you just naturally default to being an asshole? Plan? Kimmel laughed bitterly. You're not important enough to plan for, Ben. This is just what happens when someone finally calls you on your holier-than-thou attitude. The makeup artists approached tentatively, but retreated when both men waved them off. The stage manager approached Affleck, whispering something in his ear. The actor shook his head firmly. Mr. Kimmel, a network executive had appeared from backstage. A word, please? In a minute, Kimmel dismissed him without taking his eyes off Affleck. I'm having a conversation with our esteemed guest. No, Jimmy, the executive insisted. Now? Reluctantly, Kimmel stood and followed the executive to the side of the stage, their hushed but heated exchange still partially audible to those nearby. Affleck sat alone in the guest chair, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on some distant point. A production assistant approached him nervously. Mr. Affleck, would you like some water? We're back on in 3 minutes. What I'd like, Affleck replied, loud enough for nearby crew to hear, is a host who doesn't use his platform to belittle his guests for ratings. On the side stage, Kimmel was gesticulating angrily while the executive maintained a stern expression, occasionally shaking his head. The floor director started the countdown to going live again. The audience, sensing the unprecedented drama unfolding, had their attention fixed on the two men who were now returning to their positions, neither looking at the other. And we're back in 5, 4. The floor director mouthed the final numbers. The on-air light illuminated. Kimmel's professional smile snapped back into place with practiced precision. Welcome back to the show. Before the break, we were having a spirited discussion with Ben Affleck about his new film. Were we? Affleck asked, eyebrow raised. I don't recall the film being mentioned once. Just a series of personal attacks, poorly disguised as jokes. Kimmel's smile tightened. Well, perhaps we should remedy that. Let's talk about Horizon's Edge. The reviews have been mixed, to put it kindly. Affleck's laugh was hollow. There it is again. You just can't help yourself, can you? The camera caught a producer making a slashing motion across their throat. Cut this now, but Kimmel pressed on. The critics called your performance wooden and phoning it in. Care to comment on that? Kimmel asked, a challenging glint in his eye. Interesting you'd focus on that, Affleck replied, surprisingly calm now. The film is about redemption and accountability. Themes that might be worth exploring in your own life, Jimmy. My life isn't the topic tonight, Kimmel countered. No, just an endless parade of mockery disguised as entertainment, Affleck said. You know, I came here tonight as a professional, despite knowing your history of taking shots at me. I thought, maybe, just maybe, you'd evolved beyond the cheap jokes. Kimmel's laugh was sharp. Oh, so now you're the arbiter of comedy. The same guy who gave us Giggly? Something shifted in Affleck's expression. Not anger, but resolution. He calmly removed his microphone and placed it on the side table. What are you doing? Kimmel asked, genuine surprise breaking through his practiced demeanor. Something I should have done years ago, Affleck replied, standing up. I'm walking away from a conversation that stopped being productive or entertaining the moment it began. The audience fell into stunned silence as Affleck straightened his jacket. You can't just, Kimmel started. I can and I am, Affleck cut him off. For years, you've hidden behind the shield of comedy to take personal shots at me and countless others. You've made cruelty your brand, Jimmy, and I'm not participating in it anymore. Kimmel's face reddened. Sit down, Ben. You're making a scene. No, you made the scene. I'm ending it. Affleck turned to address the audience directly. I apologize to all of you who came expecting entertainment tonight. What you're witnessing isn't entertainment. It's bullying packaged as late-night television. The control room erupted in chaos. The director frantically signaled to cut to commercial, but the cameramen, transfixed by the unfolding drama, kept rolling. You think walking off makes you look principled? Kimmel stood now too, his practiced cool completely abandoned. It makes you look like you can't take a joke. There's a difference between a joke and targeted humiliation, Affleck responded. Evenly. I've spent years in therapy learning the difference. Maybe you should try it sometime. A few audience members applauded spontaneously, quickly joined by others until the sound swelled through the studio. Kimmel looked genuinely shaken, glancing around at the audience's reaction. For perhaps the first time in his career, he had lost. The room. Cut to commercial, he hissed to no one in particular, but the cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of his unraveling composure. Affleck turned and walked toward the exit. Before reaching it, he paused and turned back. One last thing, Jimmy. The film we were supposed to discuss tonight is about a man who learns that his reputation and ego aren't worth the cost of his integrity. Opening night is Friday. I hope you'll watch it. You might learn something. With that, he exited the stage, leaving Kimmel standing alone before a now applauding audience. We'll be right back, Kimmel finally managed, his voice lacking its usual authority. The on-air light dimmed at last. The commercial break that followed was frantic. Producers huddled around Kimmel, who waved them off angrily. The audience buzzed with excited chatter, many already posting clips to social media. Network executives appeared on set, faces grim as they conferred in hushed tones. When the show returned, Kimmel's demeanor had visibly changed. The smirk was gone, replaced by a tightness around his eyes that suggested barely contained fury. Well, that was unexpected, he attempted to joke, but the studio remained uncomfortably quiet. Sometimes in live television, things don't go as planned. In the green room, Ben Affleck was collecting his belongings when a production assistant tentatively approached. Mr. Affleck? Mr. Kimmel would like a word before you leave. I think we've said everything that needs saying, Affleck replied, slipping on his jacket. He says it's important. After a moment's hesitation, Affleck nodded and followed the assistant to a small office off the main corridor. Kimmel was waiting. His on-camera persona completely dropped. That was quite a statement, Kimmel said, arms crossed defensively. It wasn't meant to be a statement. It was meant to be a boundary, Affleck replied. You humiliated me on my own show. No, Jimmy, you humiliated yourself. The two men regarded each other in silence, years of professional animosity hanging between them. This will go viral, you know, Kimmel finally said. Your little stand against mean comedy. I don't care about viral, I care about dignity, mine, and the people you target night after night. Something unexpected happened then. Kimmel's defensive posture faltered. You really believe I'm cruel, don't you? He asked, a note of genuine curiosity in his voice. I believe you've built a career on making others uncomfortable for laughs, Affleck said. And yes, sometimes that crosses into cruelty. Kimmel was quiet for a long moment. It's a persona, he finally said, one that's worked for 20 years. Maybe it's time to evolve the persona. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Kimmel's executive producer entered. His expression, grave. "Jimmy, we need to talk. Social media is exploding. The network president is on the line." Outside the studio, paparazzi had already gathered, alerted by audience members texting about the confrontation. As Affleck exited through a side door, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. "Ben, what happened in there? Was this planned or a genuine fight?" Affleck raised a hand in acknowledgement but kept walking. His phone buzzed continuously with messages from his publicist, manager, friends, all alerting him to the rapidly spreading clips of his walkout. By morning, the confrontation was the leading entertainment story nationwide. Media commentators dissected every word, every gesture. Some praised Affleck for taking a stand against what they termed humiliation entertainment. Others criticized him for overreacting to standard late-night fare. What no one expected was Jimmy Kimmel's opening monologue the following night. "So, I had an interesting evening yesterday," he began, his trademark sarcasm notably absent. "If you missed it or somehow haven't seen the clips, which, let's be honest, would require living under a digital rock, Ben Affleck walked off our show." The audience murmured in anticipation. "My first instinct was to double down, to make jokes about thin skin and Hollywood egos," Kimmel continued. "That would have been the easy path. But sometimes the easy path isn't the right one." He paused, visibly uncomfortable with what came next. "After watching the clips myself, I realized something. Ben was right. Comedy should challenge and sometimes make people uncomfortable, but it shouldn't degrade or humiliate. I crossed that line, not just last night, but perhaps too often in my career." The studio fell silent, witnessing something rare in entertainment: genuine accountability. "So tonight I'm not going to joke about Ben Affleck. Instead, I want to apologize to him, publicly and sincerely. And I extend that apology to any guest who has felt belittled, rather than included in the comedy on this show." Across town, Affleck watched the broadcast on his living room television, an expression of surprised respect crossing his features. The industry aftermath was swift and significant. Ratings for Kimmel temporarily surged as viewers tuned in to see the fallout, but the confrontation sparked a wider conversation about the nature of comedy and the line between humor and harassment. For Affleck, the incident became a defining moment of his later career, not as an actor or director, but as someone who stood firm against a cultural current of mockery disguised as entertainment. And for Kimmel, it marked the beginning of a subtle but noticeable shift in his approach to comedy, one that challenged him to find humor that united rather than divided, that uplifted rather than demeaned. In an industry built on carefully managed images and scripted interactions, their raw, authentic confrontation reminded audiences of something easily forgotten: behind the characters, behind the jokes, behind the personas, there are real people with real boundaries deserving of real respect.